today. So we're back with another match ramble, and obviously it is still Forbidden Door week as we continue going through old Forbidden Door matches and stuff adjacent for the event this weekend. And today I thought it'd be a good idea to go over the match of the first ever, the main event of the first ever Forbidden Door event between AEW and New Japan. This is of Jon Moxley and Hiroshi Tanahashi for the AEW men's world title for the interim belt. Now, the story behind this match obviously is this was supposed to be CM Punk versus Tanahashi, which would have been a legendary bout, let's have it right. Maybe not in terms of a ring, but in terms of actual what it was. Punk versus Tana is insane, and Punk got injured, obviously we had to vacate the belt, and it is kind of a shame that we never got that match. But Moxley and Tana still made sense. It was like, obviously, it was the one that, most logical, give Tana versus, Mox. Would have been cool. It's still cool. And obviously, even Tana and Mox obviously have their Mox's whole excursion in Japan after being released before, I think it was before AEW, I forget. During the run where he faced Ishii and stuff, it made sense for him to face Tanahashi at some point. This match itself, for a main event of Forbidden Door, is pretty good. I wouldn't say it's insane. I wouldn't say it's incredible. I wouldn't even say it was match of that night. I wouldn't even say that. But it's pretty good. I'll say its problem is it's a lot of Moxley heavy lifting. And it's going to be. Not that Tana's bad here, but Tana's like, he's clearly over the hill at this point. And there's not a problem with that, but it's a fact. And as he can, in this match, he shows a lot of resilience and he has a lot of fun spots, and I love how it's shown. But I feel like the match doesn't get into itself until halfway, and I feel like after halfway, it feels like, okay, now we've got into ourselves, now we've dusted off the cobwebs in terms of the chemistry, let's favour it on, and then it's over really before you know it. It's kind of a weird match where it feels like it needed more time. It really did feel like it needed more time. But then again, with it being Tana, who I forget how old Tana is at this point, it's kind of hard to give it that. So you got to be obviously acknowledging of that. The match itself, it starts off as you expect, lockups, kind of some solid stuff. And the big focus on the match is whenever Moxley's striking Tana, it's fucking killing him, but he won't go down, he won't say die. But obviously Mox is taking Tana, he puts him, fucking throwing him everywhere, throwing him through the table, which was pretty cool, throwing him through the timekeeper's table, actually, was replaced weirdly. Actually, I didn't really like that. I hated how AEW used to have the commentary table at the top. I like it where it is now. And I do like, I like it. I like even Tana does, obviously, the air guitar, and there's a lot of good movements from Tanahashi here, where obviously he does do a lot of holds, a lot of leg locks and stuff like that. He does do, obviously, his famous dives, high flying to the best of his ability at that point, obviously. But as an actual match, like I say, the match is very, it has that small, back and forth moment at the start, and then for the rest of the match is only, 20 minutes. But it feels like for the first 10, it's very much a lot of Moxley just beating the hell out of Tana. And then after that point, there's a point where Moxley, straight up, Moxley does the kick in the head and spot for Bryan. I pop hard, obviously. And then Tana does it as well. That was sick, obviously, I'm happy about that. But as it continues, I like how after the halfway point, it does get a bit of pace. The crowd gets a bit more into it. And it does kind of, feels like, okay, things are heating up. And I feel like that's the match's problem, if anything, is the stakes of the match. When you watch this match, you don't really feel like there's a chance of Tanahashi winning it. And that's kind of my problem. Even from just the first few minutes, it doesn't feel like it's a plausible outcome, which is a shame. But obviously the crowd, throughout the more and more the match gets into it, it does feel like, oh, this is growing a bit. And then, like I say, if the match had an extra few minutes, you probably could have got that, because there's a point, so Tanahashi pushes Moxley out the ring, and I think he pushes Moxley into the steps. He does I forget what he does, but then Moxley splits open, which, I'm going to say straight up, I always like when Moxley splits open. I've always been a fan of blood in wrestling. I always have been. I just think it adds to that much, the imagery and everything. I do feel like it was a bit unnecessary, because I feel like it was only a knee, and it didn't, or just a basic dive, and it was there was no real need, you know what I mean? It didn't feel like a deserved, doesn't feel deserved to have that blood in that. It felt like, it looks cool, and there's Moxley's obviously trying to choke Tanahashi out, and it's something that, you know, the visual of Tanahashi getting choked out by a man covered in blood looking insane is incredible. But I just feel like they just could have sold that a bit more. I don't know. I just feel like the actual thing that initiated the blade, I weren't a fan of. But again, this is small nitpicks on that one. I do feel like, again, Tanahashi's dives, especially for his legs condition at this point, were really fucking good. Gets some serious height on it. And that's the good things, obviously. He does have Moxley and Tanahashi have a strike off, and Moxley going, come on, Tana, come on. And, like, each trying to do the King Kong Lariat, and they're both, like, sort of affected. And that's what I kind of like. Again, a lot of groundwork, stuff like that. I do think... So, the main thing I do like want to point out with the match is, obviously, Moxley is trying to choke Tanahashi out. I like how, throughout the match, they're trying to have Tanahashi, so, like, it's the King Kong Lariat. Moxley keeps going for the King Kong Lariat. And when it keeps happening, Tanahashi either dodges it or somehow counters it. It's a weird thing. And, like, so Moxley tries to choke Tanahashi out. And then, like, you know, Tanahashi's rising up and stuff, which is pretty cool. And Moxley hits the lariat, finally lands the lariat on Tanahashi. And I think, to me, that should have been the finish, but it doesn't. I think Tanahashi kicks out at one at that, which was a cool fucking moment, obviously. But then it's like, I don't know, I feel like that feels a very New Japan-esque finish to me, to have the move that was teased all the time, and then as soon as it gets landed. But again, the subversion of it kicking out is really well worked. There's a moment I love in this match where, obviously, you know, Tanahashi's the face here. Not that Moxley's a heel, but more than Tanahashi's a heel. Obviously, you're never going to get a heel Tana in this situation. And Moxley's going, I'm the ace, Tana. I'm the ace. And he starts, like, fucking smacking him in the face, kicking him and stuff. I'm the ace. And, like, Tanahashi's still not having it. He's screaming. I love stuff like that. Obviously, it has worked out well. Moxley is the fucking ace. And I like that. Like, the resilience toward, like, the choke, that was the main thing for me. Moxley does eventually hit a Death Rider. He hits 2 Death Riders in this. Is a point where, so, like, he just goes, Death Rider is weird. Like a fucking Pokemon. He announces it, but only to Tana. And it's very weird for Moxley, for me, that. I do think, so Tanahashi does a dive outside the ring. And when that happens, they're both trying to fight to get back in. They're both fighting each other. I think that's just before Moxley hits the blade. And then they eventually get back in. And it's just like, I feel like for me, with that, I feel like the match after that point starts to get a bit of momentum. It's that, like, even just before, it starts to get into itself, like I say. And then when it becomes the choke's very much cool because, like, again, it shows that resilience. Moxley covered in blood, choking on Tana. Tana's body is covered in Moxley's blood. That's sick as hell. And then Tana just kicks out at 1. It's like, that's pretty cool. But then Moxley hits a Death Rider after that, and it's like, I don't know. It just feels like the choke obviously limits something. It makes the match momentum go to a halt because it is a very static move. It's obviously very static. It's very, you know, looking down. It's a choke. It's not much you can do. And I like how I get what they're trying to do. The finish was supposed to be like a gut punch. Oh, everyone wants Tana to win, and Moxley wins with a Death Rider. But I just feel like you just add a few more minutes. You really get to emphasize that we're going to go forward with Tana, give Tana a bit of momentum, and then, like, you know, you're going to have Moxley counter with one big King Kong Lariat, and then, boom, that could have been the finish. I'm not against the Death Rider being the finish. I just feel like the way it was presented, bell to bell, it just didn't really, it didn't give itself enough time. It felt undercooked because it feels like if you were trying to get invested in a match that wasn't really letting you get invested at the start, and then when it lets you get invested, it shuts itself off a bit, and then it's kind of over. It's like, it's not a bad match. Let me get that straight away. It's not a bad match at all. It's a great match. It's just, it's limited. It's a very limited match, and I think that's definitely the way to state it. And the crowd's up for it, and the crowd does get into it around halfway. That might have affected it, obviously. But I just feel like it just feels like it could have had a bit more, and it feels like it needed a bit more to go down as a classic to celebrate such a, you know, a tremendous occasion, really. And it's, yeah, is it a victim of Tanahashi's age? Absolutely, it's got to be. You can't deny that. You can't not deny that, sorry. But it's like, is it a bad match? God, no. It's still Tanahashi versus Moxley. That's still fucking cool. It's really good. It's momentous, to be honest. I just feel like I think it would have been better than Punk and Tana. I do. I think you would have got more. Obviously, Moxley's, my opinion, a better wrestler than CM Punk in terms of Moxley's more adaptable too. It feels very symbolic to have Jon Moxley and Tanahashi go at it because they're so different styles. So is Punk, admittedly, but I feel like Moxley going with this, more deathmatch style against Tanahashi's trying to adapt this Japanese style to it is a bit different, and it does well for the high flying stuff. I do like that. But I just feel like it just missed that tiny bit. It's a good match, don't get me wrong, it really is, but it just missed that tiny bit where it just needed to push on, and then that would have really had a bit more of it would have had a bit more notoriety, it would have had a bit more of an impact, and I don't think it does. I think it caps off a great night of wrestling. Obviously, Forbidden Door original card is a great card, but it's kind of one of those matches where it's like, the main event for me, and a lot of events like that should always be the strongest, and it's a shame that it isn't, because we had a phenomenal match with Will Ospreay and Orange Cassidy. I think it was this one. It was either Cassidy and Ospreay or Cassidy and his Sabre Jr. in this one. I think it was Cassidy Ospreay this one. But point is, it's not the match of the night, but it's still great, and I don't want this to. It sounds a bit more negative than what I cover, but I don't care. It's a great match. It really is. It's a very interesting match too, actually. I will never say it's very interesting to watch. I just don't think for the concept of Forbidden Door, it was the be-all, end-all. But we get so many Forbidden Door matches, that might be being a bit spoiled. But either way, Moxley wins, obviously. He is the AEW Interim Champion at this point, obviously waiting for Punk to return. That whole debacle. But, as a match, I actually really enjoyed that. I thought it was a very good match. Not incredible, but very good. So yeah, that's my thoughts on Hiroshi Tanahashi and Jon Moxley main eventing the first ever AEW and New Japan Forbidden Door event. Let me know what you thought of the match, if you remember. What you think of, the criticism I had to say about the match. I think that's very, very interesting discussion. And what would you think, that's a question, would you think Moxley versus Tana would have been better than Punk versus Tana? Because I think that's obviously a little debate, but for me, I think Punk versus Tana would not have been as good as this. Definitely not.